You are entering a location next to a designated zone across the street from an area called Time, Space, and Alternate Reality. You may find yourself asking questions like, where did he acquire such a cool power-up? How do I get that secret bonus level? And when will they release a new nifty hat for me? There are many of these questions, and we will do our best to answer as many of them as we can, as Aperture Gaming is proud to present the DLC Zone. Greetings, fellow test subjects. Test subject 1337 here for Aperture Gaming. They make it, we test it, you download it and play it. On today's episode of the DLC Zone, we will be talking about Assassin's Creed 3, The Tyranny of King Washing, Chapter 2, The Betrayal. With the infamy being about the frontier, and now the betrayal takes place in all of Boston. Well, the majority of the city area, that is. This episode, before we begin, I have a few things I'd like to point out that I noticed. First off, congratulations to the dev and artistic and environment team. There's some small things I noticed that I'd like to point out. For one, in both this and the previous installment, even though it was set during the American Revolution, for these DLCs you could actually see they've had like cannon implements set up, and roadblocks and barricades and soldiers everywhere to show more of a trying to take over the country feel, more of a wartime setting. And it does, especially around Boston, there are more cannon placements and more troops and guards. Secondly, to my left, I have a custom-made Assassin's Creed 3 flag. Both me and my father, test subject 0317, worked on this together. When you're in Boston, you'll actually see American flags, but instead of the stripes with the stars and the logo in there, which was never in the main game, there's actually now just one star. It's very odd looking, but I think it's the King's new symbol. Another thing you'll see is there's actually posters of King George Washington around. They actually depict him either on his horse with his tricorner hat being the general, or actually as him with the crown on his throne. Kind of like the main image you see that is become the placement for the Assassin's Creed DLC for the King George series. Lastly, there's one poster that says, "The ring watches over us," and it depicts the all-seeing eye that you see floating above the pyramid on the $1 bill. This is a Freemason reference, and I will talk in a separate video about the Freemasons' relation to the Templars. It is there, and it was mentioned on the series, but like I said, that'll be a separate video for a different day. The main plot of this game is now Connor is in Boston, and he's trying to figure out what in the world is going on. He has been, in the previous installment, he was captured at the very end and brought to Boston. Now he's going around Boston, and the same rules apply. He can open treasure chests, pick locks, he can feed starving citizens, he can stop citizens from being attacked by wolves, he can stop convoys, and a new installment they have is he can stop bluecoats from executing random civilians, all thanks to King George's new decree. Like in the previous installment, you can find memory fragments of the events that actually have happened, of what is real, of what Connor does remember, scattered throughout Boston. There's 3 of them, and after you unlock all 3, there's an area where you can see the events that possibly led up to this transition to the new alternate reality. A new feature is, in the previous installment, you got the wolf spiritual guide power, where you can turn into a wolf and sneak around or summon a wolf pack. For this DLC, you keep the wolf pack, but you also get a brand new power. You get the power of the eagle, a long-standing symbol in the Assassin's Creed series. You can now fly short distances from rooftops to poles to tree branches and so on and so forth. It's good for getting around the city quickly, avoiding enemies. They also say you can use it to eagle assassin opponents. It's good for when they're holding still, not so good when they're running about. It's very it's a little annoying trying to target them while they're on the move. The story, you once again are involved with fighting people that you once called allies. And the eagle power, it's a trade-off. It's good because you get both the wolf power and the eagle power, which is good to sneak around Boston and stay hidden and to take out enemies, but the bad news is, if a guard sees you... Unfortunately, in this game, Connor is, since he's running around in his native heritage outfit, and since King George is now paranoid about the Native Americans, if any blue coat so much as sees you, they officially regard you as a threat. They look at you, they get suspicious right off the bat, and they will proceed to hunt you down. Along with 20 to 30 of their little guard buddies. That's right, the difficulty is ramped up for this because you're in the city, and you are literally surrounded by dozens and dozens of guards. The place is crawling with them. Aside from the incredibly difficult fact that you now have more guards than you know what to do with chasing after you, the story is good and really good. It is alternate history, but it is being told very interestingly. Great plot, great writing, good character development, a lot of depth to it. It has a good feel of what would happen if this did happen, and it works out right. It goes over doesn't leave any plot holes. It goes over all the areas in detail. Enough so that it does pay true to the story, but not so much that it bores you out of your skull. I was very pleased with this DLC. The voice acting for all the characters is very good. The fact that you get to go around Boston is pretty good. Now, I was actually trying to go towards one area to do one of the save civilian missions, and I actually found the barricade that the Animus sets up. Like, you can't access this memory at this time, so you can't go all around the entirety of Boston. Kind of like you can't go around the entirety of the frontier. So even though these areas are huge, they've had to space off some areas to keep it coherent with the game, with the DLC. And also, you can't use the underground system in this DLC in Boston. Now, the third DLC that'll be coming out next month, it'll be taking place in New York, and it'll be the final one. And hopefully we'll get some answers. One of the things I noticed was it did talk more about how Washington did become the crazy tyrannical dictatorship of the king. I won't go into any specific details, so you'll have to play the game yourself to see what happens. But yeah, the art direction is great, the story is great. Especially love the powers. If you go around the Boston, if you unlock some of the treasure chests, you'll get to acquire. Here's what you have: you have your hidden blade, you have your fists, you have your tomahawk, and then you can get either swords or axes or blunt objects. It depends on which treasure chest you open. I give this DLC a solid 9 out of 10. This is really great. One of my friends and fellow test subjects, we talked about what the next power is going to be. He thinks that for the spirits, that Connor might get the power of the grizzly bear for his next power-up. So in the comments below, say whether you agree or disagree with this, or think about what other spiritual nature guides that the Native Americans have that could be used to help Connor on his journey. Because wolves and eagles have been prominent throughout the entire series, and wolves were just recently introduced in this chapter. So yeah, but think about the frontier where there's all sorts of animals out there. It could be any one of those, or it could be the bear, or it could be something that hasn't been covered yet. So if you have an idea, post it below, and when it comes out, we'll hopefully see if you're right. Until next time, this has been Test Subject 1337 for the DLC Zone. Thank you and have a nice day.